Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Great to see you again here at the Standout Communicator. We have not seen each other for a long time. We have not done any of these learning sessions for, I think, for over a month. Now, who got busy? Did you get busy or did I get busy? Now, regardless of who got busy, well, that is good news. If we are both busy today, that means business is good. And a lot of people continue to do sales, continue to do selling conversations with their prospects online. And today I'd like to invite all of you to make sure that every business conversation that you do today, online or offline, virtual or face-to-face, is going to be a powerful, productive, and meaningful business conversation. Today we are going to talk about how you handle the questions that your prospect asks you. Handling questions. Now, why is this an important component of the sales conversation? Well, here's a fact. If you handle your prospect's questions well, that could bring you closer to closing the sale, to sealing the deal. In the classic selling method, which I teach to a lot of financial advisors, network marketing executives, corporate sales teams, the portion where your prospect asks questions and where you address them is the last step before you close the sale. So that's why these questions are important, and even more important is how we handle them. If we do not handle these questions well, it could derail the sale. If we handle them well, this is the final step. The next step is you get to close the sale, you generate the revenue. You get to your point B, you get to take a step closer to your most powerful dream. So this afternoon, the next 45 minutes, it's all about handling the questions that your prospect asks you. Now, here's the thing. In the classic sales method, there are two occasions for questions to be asked. Now, the prospect gets to ask the question towards the last part of your conversation. At the start of the conversation, you ask the question. You make sure that you ask well-framed, very precise question that gets your prospect to admit what he or she is looking for. And then you get to ask a few more questions that gets your prospect to admit that what they are looking for is what you have. Now, later on, after they have answered your questions, you get a chance to present your product or your service or whatever it is you're offering to your prospect. Now, it is only after you have done your presentation, after you have shown the product, after you have explained the most important and the most outstanding features and benefits, that's the time you ask your prospect if they would want anything clarified, if they need more information. That's the time for them to ask questions. Now here, listening is important as far as the salesperson is concerned, because there are two things that could probably come out of your prospect's mouth at this point. The first are what I call authentic, legitimate, valid questions. Authentic, legitimate, valid questions. You're supposed to answer them. You're supposed to address them. And here's the beauty of the process. If you address, answer the legitimate, valid, authentic questions well, that's the final step. The logical next step is you close the sale. However, in many sales conversations, you hear certain things from your prospect that sounds like a question. But hey, take a step back, pause a while, reflect, ask yourself, what did I hear? Is that really a question? Should I answer it? Should I address it? Now, here's the danger. If you end up addressing a non-question, that is almost a surefire formula for disaster. You get derailed, you move away from the last step to closing the sale to sealing the deal. So in this part, in our 45-minute interaction today, I will make sure I help you understand the difference between the legitimate, valid, authentic question and the non-questions. So let's start today's lesson. Let me show you the material that I have prepared for you today. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will begin by showing you the 3 important questions that your prospect will ask you and should be able to ask you. Usually, these are the last questions they would ask you prior to closing the sale to sealing the deal. So, look at this. Look at this. There are 3 questions they should be able to ask at the portion after you have presented your product. Okay, so the first possibility is they want to find out some more. How does this work? So I will explain in a little while what the question, how does this really work, mean? Okay, so that's the first legitimate, valid, authentic question. Now, here's the second thing they would probably and should be able to ask you after you have done your presentation. They would ask, when can I have it? And then the third question, the most crucial question, and I suggest you do not tell them the price until they have asked you this question. That important question is, how much? Okay? So 3 important questions that you can expect from your prospect and that your prospect should be able to ask you. And as soon as you have addressed all these 3 questions, you are almost sure that you are very close to sealing the deal. The questions are, how does this work? The second question, when can I have it? And the third question is, how much? Now, let's take a look at what do these questions really mean. Now, it's good to understand what is behind these questions, what are the components of these questions, so that we get to address them precisely and address them effectively so that we can bring them to the part called closing the sale, sealing the deal. Let's take a look at what does the prospect really mean when the prospect asks the question, how does this work? How does it work? Okay. Now, the possibility is he wants to understand 3 things. Is he asking you to explain some more the features of the product? Is he asking you to explain some more or give some more of the benefits of this product or the service that you offer? Or is he asking you to explain the process that makes this little gadget or product that you are selling work? Okay? Now, if I am not able to decipher which of these 3 things the prospect wants me to explain some more, then I ask. So Mr. Prospect, the question is, how does it work? Would you like me to show you some more of the features? Would you like me to share some more of the benefits that those who availed of this product have experienced? Or would you like me to explain a little bit more the process as to that pertains to how this product works? So I would validate, and then as soon as the prospect explains to me, then I will be ready to address the question. So that's the first possible question. How does it work? Now, in a little while, I will show you the 2 techniques to handle all 3 types of important questions. So we are done with the first. You will be asked, and you should hope to be asked the question, how does it work? Because the moment you are confident that you have covered this question adequately, your client, your prospect is ready to buy. So that's the first question. How does it work? He could be asking for more features, more benefits, or a greater explanation of the process involved in this particular product. We're ready to move to the next. The next question is, when can I have it? Okay. So here you go. So when the prospect asks you the question, when can I have it? The possibility is he wants to know the delivery time, delivery date. He wants to understand how long the waiting time would be. or he just wants to understand the process that happens between consummation of the sale, completion of the sale, and the actual delivery of the product. So sometimes I go and ask to be clarified. So when the prospect says, "When can I have it?" So I ask, "So are you asking me about the delivery dates?" Or when I am asked the question, "When can I have it?" So I also ask, "Are you referring uh, to the lapse of time between now, after you hand me over your check, and the time that it is delivered to your place? Is that the information you want? Or uh, are you asking me about the process that happens between now and the actual delivery?" So it's good to validate. It's good to find out exactly what is the client, what is the prospect asking from you. So there you go. That's the second important question. And you should expect to be asked this, and you should hope to be asked this, because here's another question, which if you are able to adequately cover, you know you are one step closer. You are very near that stage called closing the sale, sealing the deal. Question is, when can I have it? Now, here's the question that oftentimes we are afraid to hear. We know that when we are asked this question, this is a critical step in the sales process. Here is when we can bungle it. Okay? So maybe in your mind right now, you're asking me, why do I have to wait for the client, for the prospect to ask me this question? That's a brilliant technique, let me tell you that. So here's a little technique just between you and me. When you are presenting a product, a service, or an opportunity to a prospect, withhold discussion of the price until the end, the last portion, after you have done your presentation, after they have seen the product features, benefits, advantages, and until they have asked you how much. Okay. Now, the other question, of course, that you would want to ask me is this. What if the prospect never asks how much? Well, we'll deal with that later. Now, here's the question. How much? Now, when a prospect honestly and sincerely asks this question, they really want to know how much. So there are three things they really want to find out from us. Okay. The first is they just want to check. Can I afford it? Okay. The second is the price reasonable? And then the third is, okay, I know the price. Do I have other options? Okay. When we say options, that means, are there options on how the payment can be done? Now, here's the other thing. They may be asking, do I have options other than buying from you? So that is why this particular question needs to be handled well, needs to be handled masterfully. The question, how much? So they want to know, can they afford it? Is your price reasonable? And do they have other options? Or do they have options as far as the terms of payment is concerned? Now, is the price reasonable? Okay, you know, if you do the first part of the sales process well, they don't get to ask that question anymore. When your prospect knows that clearly understands two things, that they understand very clearly what they need, and number two, it is your product that provides the answers to their needs. Then they know that whatever price tag that comes with your product, that's going to be reasonable because it matches their need and it matches the urgency of their need. So it pays to do the first part well. That time when you are the one asking the questions at the first part of the sales conversation, so that when it's your clients, your prospects' turn to ask the questions, some of them would not have to be asked anymore. Okay, so we are done with understanding what are the three crucial questions. There may be other side questions, but these are the main questions. And you have to make sure that we have covered these three questions. And keep in mind, if they have been handled well, you are closer to the end of the sales process where you successfully seal the deal. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me now show you the only three legitimate answers to these questions. Okay, now you're about to see on the screen, which I will flash in a little while, the slide that enumerates the three answers that you supply to the three legitimate questions. These are called the legitimate, valid, useful answers. Anything outside of these three, be careful. You are not giving a responsive answer. You are not giving an answer that would help you get to closing the sale or sealing the deal. There are only three great answers to these questions. And they go by the letters, letter I, letter C, and letter A. ICA. So when you are asked a question, whether in sale or in other aspects of your profession and in your career or in your life, keep in mind there are only three great answers to questions. So here you go. These are information, clarification, and assurances. So when a prospect asks a valid, legitimate, and authentic question, questions that are worth answering, questions that need to be answered because they are crucial to closing the sale, then here are the three possible answers that you could supply to their questions. The first is you give them additional information. When you say information, you are referring to facts. Facts. So when you say this is the price, you are giving an information. Okay? So the fact is this is the price. When you are asked, when can I have the product that I bought? When can it be delivered? Then you state the fact. Okay? The fact is blank blank. So I will show you the sample answers in a little while. So the first is you supply information. Okay, so here's the other possibility. The other possibility is you are asked a question and you note that the prospect may have understood something in your presentation or in your conversation. And the question betrays that. So for example, you were asked the question, okay, so did you say I need to wait a month before I get the product? So you remember you never said that, or you may have stated a delivery date that is not really 30 days. Then you tell your prospect this. Well, I believe I need to clarify. So let me clarify that the delivery date is. Okay. So the next great answer to the legitimate questions is a clarification, making things clear for the client. Now, finally, there are times when all your client needs is an assurance. Is an assurance. So, for example, you are selling a financial product, and your financial product has a feature called liquidity. That means they can withdraw from the funds anytime. And just before you seal the deal, the prospect asks one more time. So you're sure that when I need the money, I can draw from the funds? And all you need to say is, yes, I assure you that your product carries that feature. So three answers. Most of the time, best answer is supply the information. And you can tell them that. You can begin your answer by saying, well, here's the information you need. Or here are the facts. Now, the next one is clarification. You can use the word. So you can say, Mr. Prospect, I'd like to clarify. I'd like to make something clear. Or, so that's it. Okay, so begin your answer by saying, let me clarify. And finally, the question from a prospect that simply requires that you restate something by way of an assurance, then you can frame your answer by beginning it with the words, I assure you Okay, or let me assure you, or what I can reasonably assure you is. Okay. So those are the three types of answers that you use in a sales conversation. Anything outside of that is a risky answer. What are examples of a risky answer? Speculation, speculation, a speculative answer, the answer that begins with, well, maybe, or well, perhaps, or probably, well, I guess. Okay, speculative answers. Not good in sales. You never offer that. That could derail the entire sales conversation and bring you away, steps further away from closing the sale, sealing the deal. Okay, so ICA, ICA, ICA. Now, let's take a look at how you handle the response to the questions. What are your options? And how do you use ICA in the process? Let's take a look at the next slide. So we will now begin handling questions. Now take note of the word that I use. It doesn't say answering questions because not all questions are answered right away. So the basic term is handling questions. And in handling questions, the first thing you handle is yourself. Okay. There are many uncomfortable questions, questions you wish you would never be asked. But keep in mind, we salespeople, we love questions. We embrace questions. We know that when the prospect asks questions, they are actually helping us close the sale. We love it when they ask questions, both the authentic ones and the non-questions. Go ahead, let them say it, okay? It's a two-way conversation. We've also asked them questions at the start of the sales conversation. And at this time, it's their turn to answer questions. Let's handle the questions. And the first thing we handle is ourselves. All questions, listen to this, all questions should be handled in a relaxed state. You should be relaxed. You are not tense. When you are asked a question and you tense up, your prospect sees that. It can be seen in your eye movement. It could be seen in the tension within your body. And when your prospect sees that your eyes are rolling, okay, you have been irritated or agitated by a question, that diminishes the level of trust that you attempted to build at the start of the sales conversation. So remember, the first step is handle yourself. So when you're asked a question, ladies and gentlemen, the starting step, the beginning step is, hey, pause a while. Pause. Don't hurry. Don't hurry to answer the question. This is not a graded oral recitation. And the prospect is not subjecting you to an interrogation. Assume that your prospect really just wants to know because they're making a decision. And they cannot make a decision unless they are able to ask that question first and they get a satisfactory answer. So when you hear a question, relax, pause, think. That's okay. And then the next thing you do is you acknowledge the question. The simplest way to acknowledge a question is, well, you say a very simple thank you. You do not have to say, that's a good question. In fact, I never use that expression. In sales, that's dangerous. Because if you say that, that's a good question, you are bound to answer it. You are handcuffed into answering that question. So the simplest way to acknowledge a question is, well, thank you very much. That's it. You've acknowledged the question. Or you may say, well, thank you very much. I was expecting you to ask me that question. Or, well, thank you very much. I have been asked that question before about this product. Okay. So you simply acknowledge. Now, the acknowledge part is very important. It keeps the whole conversation friendly, relaxed. If you take away the acknowledge portion, it becomes a little bit more tense, and you do not want the sales conversation becoming tense. There's such a thing as trading behavior. When you are tense, then your prospect tenses up. And when your prospect is tense, that means they have upped their defense. That's a sorry thing to happen because at the start of the sales conversation, you brought the defenses down. So just relax, acknowledge the question, very sincerely acknowledge the question, and speak slowly when you acknowledge the question. And don't say, okay, don't say, okay. Say instead, well, thank you very much. I was expecting you to ask me that question. The other thing that this step does gives you time to think how to handle it. Okay? Gives you time to think. That's okay. Give yourself time. Again, this is not a graded oral recitation. This is not a revalida. This is not an interrogation. This is a conversation in business, in sales. So after you have acknowledged the question, the last step in the process is you address the question. Okay, let me remind you, not everything you hear from the prospect has to be addressed. What you address are the legitimate, valid questions. And you know they are legitimate and valid, authentic questions when they can be answered with information, with clarification, and with assurance. If the question begs for a speculative answer, or for just a comment, or for just an observation, resist the temptation to address that question. That could derail the entire conversation. Okay. So now you are ready to address. Now, there are many ways to address a question well, but for this afternoon, I will share with you my two favorite ways of addressing a prospect's question. Okay, so remember the steps? I would pause a while, okay? When I pause a while, I could be reflective, or I could simply smile at the prospect, nod a little, staying comfortable and staying calm and relaxed. And then I would acknowledge, and now I am ready to address the question, the legitimate question, and here are my two favorite ways of doing this. There could be other ways, but these are the two proven ways that I have applied in my nearly half a century of experience in sales. Okay. The first technique I do, I ICA right away. I pause, I acknowledge, and then I ICA right away. On certain occasions, I do step number 2, or I do option number 2. I do a little probe into the question, and then I ICA the question. So you know what ICA means? You supply the information, you clarify, or you provide the assurance that was asked for. By the way, refrain from giving assurances if it is not being asked. Okay? You give an assurance because the prospect asked for an assurance. When you keep assuring, and the prospect is not even asking a question that begs for an assurance, you are overselling. That's dangerous. Okay? So let me repeat. An assurance is given only when the prospect asks to be assured. When the prospect is not giving an assurance, do not offer it. It betrays your own lack of confidence, lack of trust in your process and in your product. Be careful. But an assurance works perfectly when it has been asked for. So the other technique is probe and then ICA. Now, I will show you examples on how these two techniques at addressing questions are done. Again, I will repeat the steps. Pause a while, stay calm, stay relaxed, stay pleasant, stay connected, keep the rapport, acknowledge, and then ask yourself, how do I address this particular question? Should I just ICA it right away? Or should I probe a little and then ICA? So here's an example of how you ICA a question right away. So for example, the question is, okay, I want this house. This is the model I've been looking for. Okay, I'm okay with the price. I'm okay with the terms. But when can I have it? Okay, so delivery. Okay, so here's an example of an ICA right away way of addressing a question. You provide the information right away. Then you simply say, Thank you very much. So delivery is 7 days from when the customer completes the payment. You're stating a fact, okay? And after you have provided the information, then the technique is shut up, okay? Do not elaborate, do not over-explain. Wait for the prospect to ask further questions, just in case that answer is not sufficient for their purpose. But when you feel that it has answered the question, well, we're done. Okay? Uh, over explanations, over expounding, overloading the prospect with information is an enemy of closing the sale. So just give the information that's being asked. Okay? So that's a technique called ICA Right Away. Now, here's the probe and then ICA. For example, I am selling a gadget or a product or a technology, and then the prospect says, when can you deliver this? So, if I am under some kind of limitation, as I have very little leeway as to delivery dates, then I would begin with a probe question. I would say, when do you need it? Okay, so when do you need it? So sometimes the prospect might express urgency. So they might say, I need it right away, or I'm not in a hurry. So you see how this works? Regardless of how they would answer, when do you need it? What you do next is simply to supply the information. Well, delivery is 7 working days after the customer completes the payment. Then you would ask me, why didn't you just supply the answer right away? Why did you have to ask when do you need it? Well, there's something I want to find out from the prospect. I want to find out if the part 2 of the answer would be sufficient, or if the prospect would haggle, object, or negotiate. Now, we will not talk about those 3 things today, but one of the possibilities that you want to find out after you have handled the question is the prospect about to haggle, pose an objection, or negotiate? So that's the purpose of when do you need it. If they say, this is really very urgent, like I need it tomorrow, then I will be ready to negotiate the terms of the delivery, but I will still supply the standard answer. Well, delivery is 7 working days after the customer completes the payment. And then I will be ready for what the customer will do next. Ready. Do not offer anything else beyond what they have asked. Okay? Do not offer to say, do not offer and say, delivery is 7 working days, but let me find out what I can do for you. Now, don't do that. Resist the temptation. Say that only if the prospect asks for it. Okay? So what could happen here? They could say, well, when do you need it? And they say, I need it like yesterday. So if you can deliver it tomorrow, I would be very happy. And then you say, delivery is 7 working days after the customer completes the payment. Then stop. Let the customer ask you, is there a way that it can be delivered earlier than 7 days? Well, you are being set up for negotiation. Okay? So let me just tell you how that is done. Well, you ask yourself, do I have a leeway on the 7 days? Okay. Then what if I know that I can work out a delivery within 5 working days? Then that is now the beginning of a negotiation. But let's not talk about that now. Okay? Today is just handling questions. So this is the probe and then ICA. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. We have covered 3 very important items in today's learning session. The things we hear from our prospects. Are they real questions, valuable questions that could lead us to a closing of the sale, or are they non-questions? Okay. If they are legitimate questions, what kind of answers do they require? So today I introduced you to My favorite model, ICA, the valuable, safe, responsive answers to the questions we are asked. You give information, you clarify, or you assure. And then we talked about what are my options for addressing the question. First, I offered you the steps. Make sure you pause a while, keep it conversational. You remain relaxed. You know, this is a critical part of the conversation. There are questions you wish you were not asked, but never mind. You can always handle them. And then acknowledge briefly. The best way to acknowledge a question would just to say a brief thank you to the prospect who asked the question, and then ask yourself the final question, what are my options and which of the two options would I use? I offered you the two of my favorite options. ICA right away or probe a little and then ICA. Now, just before we say goodbye today, let me share with you what are the non-questions that you would hear. Okay. Especially when you answer the question, how much? Now here's a little technique. My friends, standout communicators, in sales, when you are asked the question, how much, just state the fact. No prelude, no preface, no embellishing, just say how much. Like for example, how much do a pair of USANA Essentials cost? Well, state the fact. For non-dealers, the retail price for a pair of Essentials health supplement from USANA is 3,750 pesos. That's it. Just state the fact. Now, what happens after you have stated the fact? You have said the price. Here's the technique. Shut up. Do not offer discounts. Do not offer other options. Do not lower the price. Do not apologize for the price. Do not explain the price unless the prospect proves to you that it is so crucial to the closing of the sale that you say some more, explain a little bit more about the price. So the technique is state the price and then shut up. Let the prospect process the price in his mind. Now, sometimes the prospect would blurt out certain things like a comment or an emotional reaction, or they might just be thinking out loud. Ask yourself that question. What did I just hear? Oh, that was just a comment. Like for example, wow, that is so expensive. So what was that? So do you offer a discount? Do you offer to lower the price? Do you want to offer a deal that would make the price lower? Hey, wait a minute. That was not a question. That is a non-question. That was just a comment or a reaction to the price, or they might just be thinking out loud. So you ask me, so Archie, how would you do it when you have stated the price and you heard a reaction? Okay, so let me role play for you. So I state the price. The pair of USANA nutritional supplements at the non-distributor price is 3,750. Then I shut up. Okay, I wait. And then the prospect says, wow, that is so expensive. So I have a choice. In a little while, I will show you the choices on how to handle the non-questions. Okay. So one of the things I will never do is to lower the price or start offering discounts or apologize for the price. Now, the other thing you never do is to affirm the view that your price is expensive. That's what some people do. Oh, yes, we're the most expensive because we're the best. Hey, the prospect isn't asking for an explanation. The prospect is just expressing a comment, an emotional reaction, or is probably just thinking out loud. Leave them alone. That's a normal human response to an information. They're processing it. Give them time. Okay? Now, how do I handle non-questions? Let's take a look at your options. Here's my favorite. ignore, and then close. Okay? So I will pretend I did not hear it. I will pretend I did not hear it. So they would say, wow, that is so expensive. Okay, I give them time to process it. And then after they have expressed their comment, I know they are done with the reaction to the price, then I will simply close. I will say, so okay, how many pairs would you like for your first order? I will close the sale. So what did I do with the emotional reaction? I ignored it. I ignored it. Okay. Now, the other technique is you acknowledge and then close. Okay. Now, this is a little tricky. So I use the acknowledge and then close sparingly because this could lead to further prolonging the conversation further, or this could lead you away from closing the sale. It becomes a very emotional discussion. So I use this sparingly. But let me show you how this is done. So for example, the reaction to the price. So I tell the prospect, well, the non-distributor price, one pair of the nutritional supplements, good for 90 days, is 3,750 pesos. And they would say, oh, that is so expensive. I wonder where I will get the money to pay for that. Oh my God, that will be a drain on my budget. Okay. So here's the acknowledge and close technique. I would simply say, I understand that. And then I would go right away to closing. Thank you for sharing with me how you feel about it. Now, how many would you want for your first order? How many pairs? Okay, I will still close the deal. Okay. Now, why would I do that? Was I being insensitive? No, I acknowledged. But the fact is, the prospect is not asking anything from me. The prospect just wants me to know how they felt about the price. That's okay. It is okay if people feel that the price is expensive. That's okay. That is not an objection. Okay? They are simply expressing an emotion. So there you go. The way I deal with this type of non-questions, I love to ignore and then close. Okay? I give them time to express it. I really listen. I would nod. And then I will ask my closing question. So for your first order, how many pairs would you want? Or I would acknowledge a bet and then close. Now, acknowledge, do not sympathize, do not even attempt at displaying your empathetic capabilities. So here's a wrong way to do number two. Well, I really think it's expensive. And a lot of people really have not bought from me because they felt that the price was expensive. Now I understand. It hurts, it hurts. Okay, you over-acknowledged. It will derail your sale. Okay? So simplest way, I understand. And for your first order, how many pairs would you want? Okay, go and close right away. You have not been asked a question. That was a non-question. You've acknowledged it. Now go and ask your closing question. Now, there are other things you would hear from the prospect other than legitimate questions and non-questions. Let me show you what they are, but they are not part of today's topic. You will have to wait for the next opportunity to explain to you and share with you how I do the rest of the stuff that comes with sales conversations. Here they are. So sometimes your customer will haggle. Okay, so at some point we will talk about how do you handle an attempt by a prospect to haggle. Okay. Now the other one is they will express an objection. Okay. So there are legitimate objections, and the objections are not answered. You handle an objection. The better way is you preempt an objection. You see, in the classic sales method, which I teach to corporations and to sales teams, if you follow the process, no objection at the end. That's called preempting the objections. Now, for bigger buyers, when the buying stakes are higher, well, they negotiate, and negotiation is okay in sales. You the closing of the sales was stalled. You just have to take one more step. But if you do your negotiation well, you'll still get to close the deal. Okay? So negotiation is okay. Negotiation is not a question. An attempt at negotiation is not a question. Now, however, you have to make it very clear, and you have to validate with the prospect whether or not what you heard the prospect say is an invitation to negotiate. Other than that, you are ready to close the deal. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. And I'd like to thank you for joining me again today. Thank you. Finally, we're back. Standout Communicator, we're a learning community, and I'm more than glad to share with you uh, learning techniques, processes that are most probably not in the textbooks you have around because these are derived from real life experiences. And I'm so glad to share them with you so that you can bring all of your sales conversation to an efficient, productive, and meaningful close. I will see you again and keep inviting your friends to be part of the Standout Communicator community. We are a learning hub, and here you get the learning for free. Because it's free, I do hope you use it wisely to progress and develop your business. Have a happy weekend, everyone, and thank you for joining me today.